As of today, March 25th, SketchUp for Schools no longer requires a school email account, so anybody can use it. Here's the link right here. I imagine this one down here does the same thing. So you can go ahead and just click on it, and then I'm just going to go ahead and sign in with Google. This is a non-school email address, so it should work. And it does, blah, 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 blah. So this is going to be good until June 30th. So I'll agree and we'll get going. So here we are in the SketchUp for Schools interface, and it's just slightly different. Now, if you're not able to get into that, you can always go to, or just Google SketchUp free, and that'll open this up. And so we'll start modeling. And this is the one that I typically use because I'm retired. I no longer have a school email address. And I'll just say no. And yeah, there's my work. So this is associated with Trimble, but if we go ahead and create a new template like we're going to in feet and inches, it looks like this with the tools on this side and the different windows over on that side. If we come into SketchUp for Schools and create a new model, we have a different guy, but it's almost exactly the same. So I'm going to go ahead and use SketchUp for Schools. Over here it's just regular SketchUp. Doesn't really matter. They're both completely interchangeable, and a model that you create in one can be opened up in the other, and a model that you create in the desktop version like on your Mac or PC can be opened up in SketchUp for Schools. They're all .skp files, so they're all going to work. So let's go ahead and start modeling. What you see on the screen now is a Toy Locomotive tutorial that I did about 3 years ago for my students. It's been viewed now about 3,000 times, and I made this in the desktop version of SketchUp. It looks like it must have been on my PC. Today I use a Mac, but I'm going to go ahead and recreate this using SketchUp for Schools so that the interface looks the same, so it's super easy to follow. And then we're going to go ahead and I'm going to make some changes so that you can 3D model this. This is one that I just inked around and played with, but the roof comes off, so again you can 3D model it so that they can sit and get printed on the bed like so. It has wheels and axles, so you can put it together like this, because it'd be pretty tough to 3D print this all in one chunk. The smokestack will be part of the main bed that we'll make first. I have no top in the window on this model. That is, there's nothing bridging across here because some 3D printers would have trouble doing that without putting in support material. Round windows, a name embossed on the side, a little hook in the back if you want to make more train cars, that sort of thing. So that's what we're headed for. That's what we have in mind. And hopefully when you get back into school, if your teacher has a 3D printer, you can bring this project in and print your own locomotive. Of course, you can do it at home if you're fortunate enough to have one at home. So let's go ahead and talk about just a couple more quick things, and then we'll get started modeling. The first thing I'm going to mention is that I'm going to be using a lot of keyboard shortcuts. Instead of coming and having your eyes try to follow these different nested menus over here with all the different tools, if I want to start a circle, I'm going to just type a C, and you'll see a C pop up right here on your screen. If I want to start a rectangle, I'll type in R, and that'll open the rectangle tool. And I suggest that you learn those. I mean, they're really save a lot of time, and they're a great workaround for these nested icons over here, which I don't consider really intelligent design as far as the interface goes. I don't like using them, but I've been using SketchUp for so long that using keyboard shortcuts just comes naturally to me. Now you can go ahead and pause the video at this particular time and copy down some of the more common ones if you want, or I'll try to remember to include a link to this quick reference card. This is for the Pro version of SketchUp, the desktop version, but all the keyboard shortcuts work out the same in SketchUp for Schools. So A for arc, C for circle, E for the eraser, L for line, etc. at some point you might get stuck. So I created this video here, SketchUp for Schools Free Basic Commands, and it's an hour and a half long. And it takes you through all of the different commands that you can use in the web-based version of SketchUp with, each chapter is only like a couple minutes long. So what you need to do is open up that link, and if you're confused, for example, how to use the Move tool, well, you can jump to it right here. Just click on that link at 29 minutes and 57 seconds for the Move tool, and it'll start to play for you. So I'll go ahead and pause that for right now and show you my third favorite tip, and that is if you're using a Chromebook or anything that can run Chrome, it's called the Floating for YouTube extension. And I've already got it installed, but you'll have the opportunity to go ahead and install it into your Chrome browser settings for your Google account. And what that allows you to do is this. As this video is playing, or any of the screencasts, we're building the Toy Locomotive in this particular case, you can just click on this little icon up here, and it opens up a new window that floats on top. So you can go ahead and hit play and watch the Toy Locomotive lesson. Let me go ahead and mute that. There we go. And it'll go ahead and play, and you can just watch that tiny little chapter, or you can go ahead and watch the tutorial on building the Toy Locomotive up here in a separate window that of course you can resize, you can move it around if you want, and that way you don't have to flip back and forth between tabs. So those are my 3 tips for getting started. Let's go ahead and start modeling. The first thing I'm going to do so everything saves to the cloud is I'm going to rename my file from Untitled to Toy Locomotive. I'll just call it Loco. Takes less time. And then I'm going to put it in my Google Drive. If you're using SketchUp Free, it'll put it in your Trimble account, but it doesn't really matter where you put it as long as you can find it. So I'll put it in this folder, and it's now saved. The name up here is changed. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a rectangle, which you would find right here, but I'll hit my space bar and type in R for rectangle, and I'm just going to go ahead and put it down here and drag it out along the ground so your lines are blue. Ground being that plane that encompasses everything within the red and green axis. And I'm going to make this 2, 5, and that's in inches, and hit return, which is really quite small compared to this dude. But I'll hit my space bar, select him, and go ahead and delete him. So now to make the next part of my locomotive, I'm going to go ahead and type the push-pull tool, P for push-pull, pull it up about a 1/4 inch, and that looks pretty good. Now the next thing that I want to do is draw the boiler. That's the round part of the locomotive, and I want to be sort of precise, so I'm going to zoom in here a little bit, and then over here we've got the tape measure tool. Now to start it, I'm going to type in T for tape measure, and a tape measure icon shows up, and then I'm going to mouse along this line. And here we've got this snap, and I'm going to left click, and while holding down the mouse button, I'm going to pull across a 1/16, 1/8 inch, and I'm going to go ahead and let go. So that creates a guideline. This is it just helps me lay out my geometry so that we get very, very specific. So I'll come over to this edge. And by the way, don't grab it by the midpoint. Grab it just up here anywhere, and then pull in the direction you want while holding down the mouse button along the red axis, and when it says 1/8, let go. So the next thing I'm going to do is create the boiler by making an arc. So the arc tool's right over here, but I'm just going to type in A for arc because I'm just that lazy. And I'm going to pick the first part of the arc over here. And by the way, down here in this part of your screen, you're going to get all these different hints on what you can do and how to do them one step at a time. Over here on this side, you get all these different measurement and precision options. So right now it's going to make a circle with 12 sides. I want a smoother model than that, so I'm going to type in 30. And then I'm going to come over here, click here to start my arc. My arc is going to end up over here at this intersection, and I'll click on it and I'll start to pull up. Well, that's not right, is it? It is sticking to the green axis. So how do we make it go up? Up in this case is over here along this blue axis. So if I come over here and mouse along the blue axis, it starts to come up, and I'm just going to pull this up. Whoops, I jumped off of it there. Well, let's lock it in place. Let me show you how to lock it in place. So there it is along the green axis. On your keyboard, if you look at it right now, you've got 4 arrow keys, up, down, left, and right. So let's press on the left one, see what happens. Well, that's not right, or correct. Press on the right one. Well, that doesn't help. Let's press on the up one. Oh, look at that. It's going along the blue axis, and how far do we pull it up? We pull it up until it tells us that we have half a circle. There we go. See the little hint there? So I'm going to go ahead and click, and I now have half a circle. So let's go ahead and now take, and I'm going to type in O for orbit. I'm going to orbit around just a little bit, and let's create the boiler body again using the push-pull tool. So I'll type in P for push-pull. I'll click on this surface, and I'll start to drag it back. Now the rectangular base on the bottom is 5 inches long, so I'm going to go ahead and make the boiler 3 inches long. And that kind of looks long, but if I type in O for orbit and look around, it looks reasonable. I mean, we can always come in and edit any of this. But at this particular point, I'm going to do a couple of things. One is I'm going to type in E for erase, and I'm going to erase these guidelines that I probably don't need anymore. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of this geometry, because if I select on different pieces, you can see that this is made up of different line segments, or what are called edges, and different planar surfaces, which are called faces. And what I want to do is glue them all together into one chunk, if you will. So I'm going to go ahead and, let's see, I'll type in H for hand, so I can kind of pull it down like that, and then hit the space bar to get my arrow or select tool, and I'm going to drag a rectangle around all of that geometry to select it. Another thing I could do would be Control or Command A for select all, and then anywhere I'm going to right click and I'm going to make it a group. Okay, so this is now all glued together. All these edges and faces are now one single group. Now if I want to edit this at any time, I can. All I need to do is double click on the group for editing. I'll click back outside to close it, or I can click on it, right click, and choose to edit the group. It's another way to do the same thing. I'm going to type in O for orbit, come around here, and this dashed rectangular box that goes around all of your geometry is your visual clue that this is open for editing. So now I could type in P for push-pull, click on this, and change it if I wanted to. But I don't want to. I'm just trying to show you how you can edit a group. Once you make it a group, it's not locked in stone forever. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit escape, click outside, and the next thing we're going to do is make the cab. Okay, so let's go ahead and make our cab now. I'll type in O for orbit just to kind of look around here. And I think 5 inches is probably a little bit too much. So I'm not locked into this forever. That's one of the great things about 3D modeling, is that you can always edit your work. So I'll type in my spacebar to get back to my select tool. I'll click on my group, right click, and choose to edit it, or I could have just double clicked on it. P for push pull, and I'll push that in, let's see, let's say 3/4 of an inch. So I'll type in 3/4, hit enter, tap my space bar, click outside, and now I'm going to go ahead and build my cab on top of here. So again, I need some layout geometry, so I'll type in T for tape measure. I'll come down along this back edge, again, not on the midpoint of the group, but rather just somewhere along this edge. And I'm just going to drag it across the green axes and put it right there. Then I'm going to type in R for rectangle and choose this intersection and create a new face that goes to this back point. Now, I want to take and quickly be able to draw some parallel lines. And I could take my line tool and click here, 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 and here to create a new face. But there's a quicker way to do that. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to type in F for offset. And then I'm going to come just along any of these edges and kind of come out here. See that dual shading? That means that I've got an infinitely thin face on top of an infinitely thin face. But if I go ahead and click, see, it creates an equal distant parallel rectangle from what I had before. So I'm just going to go ahead and make this 1/8 inch. So I'll type in 1-8, hit enter, and then P for push pull, and I'll grab that face right there and I'll pull it up. I'm just eyeballing here, let's say 1 3/4 inches. Then I'll type in O for orbit to kind of look around. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. None of these measurements are super critical, but I like that work. And so now I'm going to make the back door for the cab. So I'll hit my space bar. I'm going to select this face, right click, and align my view so that I'm looking straight at it. And now again, I'm going to take my tape measure tool and come over here and pull a guideline across, I don't know, 5/16 of an inch. Yeah, that sounds fine. And then I'm going to come over here and I'll just pull it across. There's 1/4, there's 5/16. And now R for rectangle. And I'm just going to pull actually all the way up like that. So O for orbit. And I've created that face, and now watch this. I am going to cut or remove geometry using the push-pull tool. So P for push-pull, I'm going to grab this face, and I'm going to start to push it in. And if you zoom in here, see that dual shading? That's called inference, and that means that I've gone ahead and pushed this in all the way so that the face on the right, the one that I started with, is touching the one on the inside. And when I left click, whoop, it didn't work. So maybe I was talking too slow there. So again, let's go ahead and undo that. I'll click P for push pull. I'll click on the inference, and it didn't work, huh? Well, that happens sometimes, but now I'm going to go ahead and just do one additional step. When I erase this line, it erases that face. And so we now have the back opening, and you can make this any size you want. There's nothing super critical about it. And I'll get the chance to show you how to use the push-pull tool to cut away geometry, plenty of times in this opportunity. But let's go ahead and make the window for the engineer here. So again, I'm going to go back to my select tool by tapping my space bar. I'm going to align the view so I'm looking right down at it. And this time T for tape measure, and I'll come in this time. Let's see. Well, yeah, we'll stick with 5/16. That seems to be like a good distance for this particular model. Notice that it's jumping in 1/16 of an inch increments, which is just fine. R for rectangle. I'll draw my rectangle along here like this. And then O for orbit, so you can see what I'm doing here. P for push pull. Whoops, I had the wrong surface selected. There we go. P for push pull. I've got my inference, and I click, and see, that time it worked. It's just one of those things about SketchUp. But there are so many different ways that you can skin a cat, if you will. So O for orbit, and we'll take a look at that. And I'm liking that. So let's put in our round windows next. Next, I'm going to go ahead and turn on a feature that is called X-ray. So what is X-ray? Well, when I click over here on the magnifying glass, because there isn't an icon or a keyboard shortcut for it, when I click on it, and if I start to type in X-ray, it shows up, and I've got this little slider right here that I can turn on. Ah, look at that. So I can now see through my model. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and turn X-ray off for the moment. I think I've got a better way to do this. So again, I'll type my space bar, right click, align my view so I'm looking straight at it. And this time I'm going to take my tape measure tool and I'm going to pull across, and I want to go halfway. Okay, but you know, I don't want to have to do any math. I mean, I taught math for 20 years, but I'm just as lazy as the next guy. So can SketchUp help me find halfway across? Well, actually it can. If I mouse up here at this edge and come across, there, see that little blue dot up there? That is the icon, or what I would call a snap from my AutoCAD days, as the midpoint. So now I can take and type in C for circle, and just go ahead and click about right there and pull out a nice big circle, again 5/16 of an inch, and that cuts that face. So O for orbit, and this time I'm going to take this circle, select it, P for push pull, and this time I'm going to pull all the way through like that. Now, you're probably wondering why I did that. Well, there's lots of ways to do this. The first way would be to, I'll go ahead and undo that, would be to just go ahead and pull that back until I get my inference, click, and there's my circle. And then I could come around this side, do those same steps again, T for tape measure, and blah, 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 and duplicate what I did on the other side. But what I'm going to do instead is just try to show you something different. So I'm going to go ahead and redo that circle right there, P for push pull, and push it all the way through. And then I am going to click my space bar, align my view, zoom out a little bit here, and I'm going to draw a box around like this, and then it's going to select all this different geometry. You know, it selects the left side, the right side, and this cylinder going through, and then with my select tool, right click and choose to intersect the faces with the model. So now I can take and select around this, delete it, select that, whoops, I selected too much there, select that and delete it, and now I've got this geometry over here and this geometry over here. So now I can just go ahead and a little bit of luck here, select this face and delete it, and I've got my hole. And then I'll orbit around to this side, and I'm gonna, see, it did not cut there, did it? You know, and that's not exactly sure why again. I think if I come in here and type in L for the line tool and click that, there we go. So that now split those two surfaces. Not quite sure why I didn't do it the first time, but there's lots of things I'm not sure about. So at this point, P for push-pull. I'm going to click on this face right here, then P for push-pull. Push it back until I get my inference, that dual kind of goofy shading. Click OK. And ooh, looks like I got a little extra bit of circle there. So let's go ahead and... Huh. Well, that's certainly interesting. But that certainly works. I think I'm going to do some undos here. Oh, looks like it didn't push. Oh, looks like I push-pulled this face all the way through. I'm showing you my mistakes as well as the stuff I do right. I make plenty of mistakes just like everybody else. So let's just go ahead and check that. Okay, so that is its own face. And then I'll orbit around, and with my select tool choose that. Let's see what happens if I just delete it and then select that face and delete it, and then we're good. So that worked out pretty good. So type in H for hand, come up here, and I think this is pretty much done. And then I'm going to go ahead and triple click on the cab there, right click, and make that a group. So I've now got two groups. I've got the base, which includes the boiler and this bottom rectangular solid, and then I've got my cab right here. So at this point up here, I'm going to go ahead and click on save, and we'll move on to our next chapter. Okay, next we're going to go ahead and make the smokestack. You might notice in the background, I apologize for it. I'm doing a little bit of 3D printing in my tiny little office. There it is right there, and we'll be doing some of that later on when we get our Toy Locomotive set. So anyway, I'll go ahead and move that back over there. I'll go into my tray model here, and to make the smokestack, again, I'm just kind of spitballing here. If I measure across here, that's 2 inches. So let's see, I didn't want a guideline there, but in any event, so I'm going to type in C for circle, and over here on the ground, which represents the plane that is defined by the red and green axis, I'm going to go ahead and draw a circle 3/16 of an inch radius. I'm going to double click on my circle there, and then I'm going to type N for move, grab it by the center, and bring it up here on top and place it right there. That's on the edge in the group. Now, what edge are we talking about? Well, let's go into our view here and let's display hidden geometry. And it is right there on this edge right here. Now, SketchUp cannot draw circles. SketchUp can only draw polygons defined by edges, and if all the edges are closed, then it makes a face. So we've got that edge right there. I'm going to go ahead and just turn the visibility of the edges off, and I'll close that for now. And I'm going to go ahead and now take and type, or I'm going to select that face right there, the circular face, and type in P for the push-pull tool, and I'm going to pull it down inside the locomotive. Oh, it doesn't really matter how much, just a little bit. So I'll go ahead and click my measurements dialog box. Down in the lower right hand corner of the screen is saying 3/8 of an inch, and that's plenty. So I'll go ahead and click there. It doesn't look like much happened, but if we turn X-ray back on, you can see that the cylinder that I just drew now extends down inside the locomotive. And we'll fix that in just a little bit, but that's important for our 3D printing later on. So we'll see. We'll go ahead and turn X-ray back off. And now I'll take this face right here and pull it up. Oh, let's see. It's hard to say how much. So let's just go ahead and click, and we'll say 1 inch. And then I'll orbit around here to see how that looks. Well, the cylinder has to be higher than the cap. Otherwise, the engineers are going to get all this smoke. So let's make it a little bit higher here. So I'm going to go ahead and type P for push-pull, but this time, without clicking on anything else, I'm just going to go ahead and tap my Option key. And when I pull that up, we'll say, let's pull it up a 1/2 inch. Notice this line right here? What it did was, there is a face inside of there. So let's go back to our X-ray tool here. And there's a face right in there. Now it's difficult for me to select on it, but it created this extra edge. And here is why I did that. I'm going to turn X-ray back off so that you can see what I'm doing. And now I'm going to take and scale this to give it that kind of cool tapered view. So I'm going to click on this edge right here, and I'm going to type S for scale. And I have these grips, and if I pull on them, well, it kind of bends it in a goofy way, doesn't it? So I'll undo that. And while holding down my Option key, and down here, remember this area right down here in the lower left corner. This is where you get all the information about what your different options are. And this tells me that if I hold down my Option key, I can pull that out. And that right there, I think that, I mean, you can fiddle around with it as much as you want. But for me, that's pretty good looking smokestack. So I'm going to now take and come into my different views here. And let's see, I'm going to look at it from the top. That looks okay. And then I'll look at it from here. Yeah, it's kind of maybe just a little bit kind of chunky. And I think it's just a little bit too tall. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this circle right here and type in M for move and click, and I'm just going to pull it down along the blue axis, and then I'm going to use my select tool and choose that circle and click move and pick anywhere for a base point and kind of pull it down along the blue axis. And then I'm going to click this circle here, type in S for scale while holding down my Option key, and scale it just a little bit more. And so now I'm going to take my orbit tool and move around, and I think I like that pretty good. So I'm just going to do one more thing here, maybe two more things. Is I'm going to select this circle up on top, type in F for offset, click on it, and maybe choose about right there. I'm going to orbit around a little bit. I'm going to select this circle, and then type in P for push-pull, and pull down maybe 1 inch. So now when I orbit around, it doesn't go all the way through, but we don't want that to happen. So at this point, notice right in here, I don't have a sharp edge here, a dark black line like I do over here, and that's because no edge exists. So I'm using my select tool. I'm going to grab all of this geometry here, or rather, I'm just going to go ahead and triple click on my smokestack, right click, and intersect all those faces with the model. And I want you to watch right in this area here when I do this. So I'm going to intersect with the model, and notice how it makes a nice sharp edge, and that is now unique, separate geometry. And so I'm going to come back and turn on X-ray so I can see the stuff inside. And I've selected this part right here, and I'm just going to go ahead and delete it and select that circle and that face and delete it. So now what I have is my smokestack, which is now part of my model. And notice how this intersection right here is nice and, it's just kind of nice and clean. So let's turn X-ray back off. And let's take and triple click on that smokestack and make it a group in case we want to edit it later. And then move on to our next chapter. Okay, next we're going to go ahead and build some train wheels. And before we do that, I just want to take a quick look at a couple of measurements. One is the rectangular base is 1/4 inch tall and 2 inches wide. And I want it to be 1/2 inch tall so that I have more room for my axles. And so I'm just going to orbit around here, and then I'm going to click on this once and then double click on it again to open it up for editing. Select that face, P for push pull, and then I'm going to tap my option key so that it makes another 1/4 inch thick rectangular solid. So I'll click and I'll pull down 1/4 inch. And so now when we look at this, we'll click outside here to close the group. We've got this line going around here, which doesn't affect our 3D printing in any way, but it's going to make it just a little bit easier to draw our wheels. Now, because I made this new 1/4 inch thick rectangular solid on the bottom, if you come in here and notice, you'll see that my red axis, in other words, this corner right down here, is not lying on the ground. I hate to call it that, but that's kind of the way everybody thinks of it. So to move it, I'm going to just go Command A or select all. Then I'm going to type the M key to start the move command. I'll zoom in here and I'll just go ahead and click that lower corner and move it up until it tells me I am on the origin. And so now everything just makes a little more sense, and that'll be important for when we do our 3D printing, because we're going to want the locomotive to be sitting flat on the printer table. So let's go about the business of making the wheels. Let's just find a nice side view here that'll work, and that certainly will. So I'll type in C for circle and kind of put it about there and come up. I want my wheels to be 1 inch in diameter, so that means that the radius is going to be 1/2 inch. So I'll click on that, and then let's see, we'll come to a view here. Let's just use our orbit tool. That'll be quicker. There it is right there. Now, here's something I haven't shared with you yet. Right now you can see that I'm using the orbit tool. If I want to pan up, that is, use the hand tool, I can type in H for hand and pan it up. Or if I'm in the orbit tool, I can just hold down my shift key. And there we go. So let's go ahead and just select that circle, P for push pull, and let's come out 1/4 inch. So at this point, that's just a wheel. So I'm going to triple click on it to select all of the wheel, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to make that a group. Next thing I'm going to do is come back into any view, doesn't really matter, and I'm going to type M for move, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll just grab that corner right down there. And then I'm going to start to move this wheel across along the red axis. I'm going to tap my option key to make a copy of it and come across here, and that's 2¼ inches, and that makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, so let's see, where's my top view? Right there. And so at this point I'm going to hold down, I've got one wheel selected up here, and so I'm going to select, by holding down my shift key, I'm going to add one more wheel to my selection set. I'm going to come out here and type M for move. I can click anywhere out here, and I'm going to start to pull it down along the green axis. I'm going to tap my option key and click about right there. Now I can move them again if I want to, but let's see how that looks. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So what I've got now is I've got a group here, a group here, a group here, and a group over there, but they're all the same, and everything is lined up just exactly like I want it to be. So next we need to go ahead and take and make the axles. So I'm going to come up here, I'm going to do, oh, there we go, a save as. Just going to call this number 3, or I'll call it wheels, because that's how far we got. I'll click OK. There we go. Wants to know what folder, so I'm just going to put it in the same folder as the other work. And you can see the title changed up here, and so now we can continue with the axles. Now you might have noticed that the screen looks quite a bit different, and I probably should have done this in the beginning because sometimes it's difficult to see the green and the red axes. So I just opened up the styles over here, and you can change these, you know, just about any way you want. And let's see, which one did I pick? Doesn't affect your model, by the way. The visibility of your model is, I mean, your model's still your model, but if you pick a style like this, well, I mean, it looks like things disappeared, but there, you know, this shows all your different intersections, and you know, there are reasons to use it. In any event, let's just go ahead and try that one right there and go about the job of connecting the wheels with an axle. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and take this part and my cab here, holding down my shift key, and I'm going to hide them. So I can hide this too, might as well. And now I can go ahead and draw a 1/4 inch axle going from one to the other. So what I need to do is open up one of my wheels here, and then I need to select the edge, as you think of the circle, not the face, that's the face, but rather the edge. Right click and find the center, which puts just a little tick mark right there that I can now draw on. So C for circle, and what did I say, a 1/4 inch, so that means a 1/2 inch, excuse me, a 1/8 inch radius. Go ahead and click. Select that face, P for push pull, and I'm going to push it across. And if I make it even with this face, that's 2¼ inches. But I don't want to connect the two wheels, or else I'm not going to be able to assemble my locomotive. So what I am going to do is just go ahead, instead of going over 2¼ I'm going to go over 2 space 3/16, which is 1/16 of an inch shy of 2¼ inches. And so let's turn on X-ray mode so you can see what's going on here. And you can see that the axle goes inside the wheel there on the right. We'll pull that over here. And it goes into this part. Now there are lots of ways to do this next part, and I'm just going to do it the simplest way I can. We could get into the solid tools and all of that, but we're just trying to make this toy locomotive. So I need to put the hole in this other wheel. So I'm just going to click on the wheel and axle combination, type in M for move, just going to click anywhere, and then pull along the red axis, and I'm just going to type in 5 inches, which is going to make it go almost completely off the screen. But that's fine, because when I put it back, I'm going to put it back 5 inches, and 5 inches is a nice easy number to remember. So just like before, I'm going to double click to open up this group. I'm going to find this edge right here. I'm going to right click to find the center, which gives me that little tick mark. So with that center located, I'll start my circle tool, and I'm just going to come out and with a 1/8 radius, which makes a 1/4 inch diameter. Now you need to just listen just for a second, because if we're going to 3D print this, the hole that I make, if it's a 1/4 inch and the axle's a 1/4 inch, and I try to put the 1/4 inch axle inside the 1/4 inch hole, 3D printers usually make holes just a little bit smaller. So I need just a little bit bigger hole here. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to select this face and type in F for offset, click, and then I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. I don't know if that's the perfect amount or not, because every 3D printer is different. The materials are different. Of course, there's an infinite number of settings, but we're just going to go ahead and go with that. And what you might do before you print the whole locomotive is just go ahead and print part of an axle and part of a wheel and just see how they fit given the particular settings you have. In any event, we'll come in here. I'm going to select that 1/4 inch circle. I'm going to delete it. I'll select that face, push pull, push it back 3/16 of an inch. Got to orbit it around just a little bit here. There we go. Select, push, pull. 1, 2, 3 snaps, 3/16 of an inch. Close the group, and let's see how this fits together. So I'll grab that. M for move. Click anywhere. Make sure you pull along the red axis. Type 5. Hit enter. And you can see kind of right in here that there's a little bit of a gap. And again, we'll just have to see how that goes. One thing's for sure, and that is that glue can fix a lot of this. But if the axle's too big, or the hole's too small, or both, well, it's not going to fit together. Now, I've got these back here, and I could do all that work again, but I don't wanna. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, let's see, I'm just going to take this group right here and delete it. And then I am going to click on this and choose to move it. And let's see, we'll just say from that endpoint down there along the red axis, don't forget to tap your Option key until it matches up with the existing wheel. And so actually now I've got a wheel inside a wheel, don't I? So I'm going to take this and hide it, and take that and delete it, and then I'm going to come into my display, with the eyeglasses, show my hidden objects, go Command A and unhide. And there we are with our axles. Now the problem is I do not have holes in the locomotive bottom, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to do that next. Okay, the next thing we're going to go ahead and do is put the holes in the base of the locomotive for our axles. And remember, the axles are a 1/4 inch in diameter. So I'm going to double click on the base group or the main body of the locomotive, T for tape measure. So I'm going to take and just grab a red spot right here. I'm going to start to pull along the green axes, and now I'm going to use those arrow keys again. In this case, it turned out to be the left arrow key for me, and that's going to keep it on this face, because it's going to kind of want to jump around on the wheel. I'm going to go ahead and put it right there. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab another line, come along this way, tap my left arrow key to keep it along this face, and just kind of looking to get it centered on the wheel. Does not have to be perfect. Now I'm going to click outside the group, grab this, and not delete them, but hide them, and then open this back up again. Oop, I triple clicked. There we go. So C for circle. And I'll put it right there, and I'm going to come out just like I did before, 1/8 of an inch, and then I need to delete this line right here, or that edge, and I'll click on this, F for offset, and again I'll just click and kind of eyeball it. These holes can be bigger, that way your axles will rotate freely. So back to my select tool, I grab that edge and delete it. And let's see, I got a little bit of erasing to do here. Okay, so we've now got that circle. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and grab the top and the bottom half of it. Actually, if I delete this edge and this edge, I'm not going to have that problem. So now I can grab the whole circle, and we don't need that edge going around anymore. You can delete it at any time. We're not going to use it again once we get this step done. I'm going to move this, and I'll grab, let's see, I'm just going to grab a point out here, start to pull it across the green axis, tap my Option key, and just kind of get it centered. Kind of centered on that guideline. It's kind of snapping around, but that's okay, because again, the location is not super important. Then I'll come in here, select this face, P for push pull, start to pull it in, and type in 2 inches. And then I'll do the same thing over here. P for push pull. SketchUp will remember that it's 2 inches, so all I need to do is just double click. There we go. And let's see, let's orbit around, and yep, looks like we can see through the hole. We can see that wheel over on the other side. We've now got our holes, and by the way, this hole over here is not going to line up with the wheels, but that's okay because we're 3D printing it, and we're going to be printing this as individual parts and then assembling it together. So let's go back to our hidden objects here, and I'll select, there we go, grab that, and unhide it, and grab that one, and unhide it. And then I'm going to go through and do a save as, and I'll just call this wheel and axles 2. Doesn't matter what you call it, as long as you can remember where you saved it in case you want to pull it out later on. And so there we go.